Welcome to the Why Music podcast, where we talk to independent artists about their journeys, the inspirations behind their music, and ultimately why they make music. This next artist is better described as a DJ and producer with a knack for collaborating with rappers and singers. Finding a cross between hip hop and house, he is bringing a new sound to the table with every release. Welcome 2 Points.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Happy to have you. So I always like to kind of start things off with where your journey with music kind of all kicked off.
Yeah, for sure. So I started music about 7 years ago. So how I fell in love with it, went to my first like ever EDM show, was like Diplo, Don Francis, Zed's Dead, just a bunch of those people, and I just was like, this is like the coolest thing ever. Like I want to get into this. Like I don't know how to get into this, but like I want to get into this so bad. So kind of originally stemmed from that, and then just from going to all these like festivals and EDM shows, I just like fell in love with like making music, and that's fortunately what I do full time now. So no, it's awesome.
So it was just one live show that just kind of flipped the switch for you.
It really was like one live show, and then like I literally was like, how do I get into this? I downloaded like GarageBand, was my first ever like DAW, which is hilarious. But I was just like, I'm just gonna learn how to make beats. I would watch all these tutorials, just like spend hours and hours in my mom's basement, just like trying to make EDM beats and stuff like that. And yeah, just kept it going from there.
So at what point, I mean, was it really just in that moment that you were like, not just, oh, this is something I want to try out, but something that I want to like continue to do? Or was it just like what they're doing is cool? I want to see if I can even do this as like a hobby. And then it just kind of transformed from there. Like, how did that process from just shooting your shot to making it happen kind of happen?
Yeah, I think it was really in that moment. I was just like, whatever this lifestyle is, just seems like something that's like so sick to me. And I was like, I have to try to like make this work, like no matter what. It was really in that like one moment. I was like, I'm trying this out. Like I think this is just like too cool not to. So
That's crazy. Just one,
one
like,
show, but I obviously have been
that's
tons of other ones after that, and like still inspired me a ton. But it was really that one show. I was just like, this is like, I think that show was on like a Saturday, and like by that Monday, like I had GarageBand like downloaded, and I was like trying to make the same music. Like I don't know, I was just like obsessed.
That's crazy. You don't usually like a lot of people that come on here are, I mean, do it a little differently and aren't really on the like EDM side of things. And they're like, well, I like was singing when I was younger. I was in choir or I played piano. And like, it's just this like slow build, but yours just was like an overnight flip of the switch.
Yeah, it really was. I would have like never thought to get into it, but it was just like kind of like overnight. One show, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
I
So
mean, it worked. Clearly, here we are.
exactly. So shout out Matt Decent 2014.
um, so at what point, like along that kind of line, did you start getting to the point of like, okay, this isn't just something I'm like experimenting with anymore. Like these are actual like songs I'm putting together or beats even, like whatever you want to call it. And just really decided to start like putting it out, getting people to like rap over it, sing over it, whatever the case. Like what point did it really become like I'm putting this shit on Spotify?
Yeah. So I guess that journey took a little longer. So I actually went through two rebrands before I got to my current brand, which is 2 Points, which is kind of crazy, but I'll explain all that. But basically it was always like try to finish a song, just post on SoundCloud. I would always try to like perfect it. Like I would spend like 4 or 5 months on like one song. Didn't really know what I was doing, but just wanted to be perfect. They were more of the story, they were all trash. But I think just over time it developed into 2 Points, which we could talk about that more. But I really didn't have the other projects I had weren't like a cohesive project. They had no branding to it. It had like no story behind it. The music didn't mean anything. So I feel like it just took me time to like actually sit down, like develop like what is a project I want to develop that has a sound, that has a theme to it, a color scheme, kind of like all that. So I feel like after doing it for about 6 years, I came up with the brand that is 2 Points now. So really, really was like 6 years just to get to like year one of this like new brand, if that makes sense.
I mean, sometimes that's just the road you have to take.
Yeah. So
It
like I
can't.
have
No, go
yes,
ahead.
I have music on like Spotify for like my old projects, but like I hope nobody ever finds that. I feel like it's good to like even if you have to like stop and restart, it's like you still have all the skills of like the music production and stuff like that. So now it's just like actually putting in a package that is cohesive and makes sense for like the audience and like who you have in mind for that audience. So
So, do you think that like those previous projects were sort of like stepping stones in like a learning experience kind of way for like what you really wanted to do as far as like shaping your artistry? Like how did those kind of impact what 2 Points has come to be?
yeah, exactly. So I think those really have shaped it, and the way they shaped it was like those other brands, like well, first off, they weren't even brands, and that was like I think the major problem. But I think it was just I didn't know I was still experimenting what my sound was and what ultimately the music like that I had the most fun making was. Like I loved all different types of like EDM and hip hop and stuff, and I really wanted to like draw a line in the sand of like what it's gonna be like moving forward. So yeah, I feel like that just took two other projects and 6 years to like kind of find that. But what really kind of was like part of 2 Points was I'm also like a music engineer, so I work at studios. I travel around a bunch of different studios. I mix and master. I have another company. It's called 2 Point Sound, which is like music software technically right now that I'm starting. But what stems from that is like the love of like hip hop. So I love making like rap beats and stuff like that. And always working in studios, it's always rap and hip hop music. Like that's like some of the most. That's like the most clientele is mostly like hip hop and rap, which you can make like good money doing that. But with that, that's how I kind of wanted to get the sound of hip hop and fuse it with my like love and passion of house music. So it's kind of like that background as well that like influenced the 2 Points project today, which is that fusion of rap and hip hop with house music.
So is that kind of where we get 2 Points as like the name?
Exactly. Yeah, it's two perspectives on music. So that's exactly where it comes from.
So it's just a nice little combination of hip hop and house.
Exactly. So that was kind of like the lining of the sand is like stick to that as much as you can, and that's the sound I'm building around it.
So how do you go about, because I mean, there are obviously like with anything, they're two different genres, even in two different like house is a subset of EDM. EDM is like a big realm of different things, and hip hop is all encompassing of a lot of things as well. How do you kind of take elements from each and combine them into something that makes sense?
Yeah, so actually what I'll do is when I'm like collaborating with an artist, I'll have them rap or sing over a hip hop beat that I made them. I'll get that performance out of that because if you try to take a traditional like hip hop artist and put them on an EDM song, it's really hard for them to like give their full potential of performance over this like crazy EDM house beat because they're not used to it. So like what I've done and like what I do is I'll make a hip hop beat around them that's good for them, get them on it, and then from that I take the vocals and then reshape that and maybe use elements from the original beat into like a house track. So it's like keeps that performance that I think is awesome, but then just almost it's almost like a remix, but the remix is the actually like the original version.
That's, I feel like, a very unique approach. I feel like you don't see something like that really ever.
Yeah, which I think is cool. I think it has been done, but I think it's just for me, I found that's the best way to get the performance. And all the songs with features that I have on my records have all been done that exact way. They've all started as something completely different and then have shaped to that. And what I want to do is I also want to just put out like every single, maybe just do EP with all the other demos that we made. So like if you are a hip hop fan, you're like, oh, this is cool. This is how it started. But then it went to this like house
Mm.
mix, which is actually the original one. So that's also something I wanted to do. And I've been wanting to do with the project too. Like if I did an album, I'd want like side A to be all the hip hop records that we originally did, and side B like actually the EDM ones. So
Ooh, that'd be kind of cool to have like a before and after kind of taste.
yeah, which would be cool, I think. So and it just goes along with like the brand that I'm like currently creating and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about how, the project gets its name and the sound it is for it.
No, that is actually really cool. I mean, I'm not a big hip hop or EDM person by any means, but I'm like, that would kind of make me want to like listen back and be like, I wonder what this originally sounded like. And maybe at some point be able to actually hear what it originally sounded like.
Yeah, because all the records are completely different, like what they originally started out with, and they're still cool, but it just almost sounds like it was a remix when it's the original, which is kind of like the vibe and sound I'm going for.
That's really cool. Yeah. Um, so what when it comes to putting together that like first draft, we'll say, when it comes to piecing together that first beat that you're essentially sending to collaborators or getting collaborators on, where do you kind of find the inspiration or the ideas to kind of use and build on to make the full original work?
Yeah, so that process always kind of changes, but one thing I kind of try to stick to is a lot of house music is around BPM, like between like 120 and 130, depending on like different subgroup of house you're like working in. So I feel like when I make the hip hop beats, I want to stick to something around that speed, which a lot of like trap beats are. Thankfully, they're around like 130 to even 140. And so with that, you're able to like slow down the vocals without it sounding like too phasey or too weird. And it kind of sounds like the natural version because if you make a hip hop beat that's like 80 BPM and you try to make that vocal like house music, it might be like way too fast and it might like throw off the record. And if that's what I'm trying to stick to with the house side, like that's what I'm thinking about when I'm like making house beats specifically for that project. Um, so that's like one thing that I really try to stick with into when I'm originally making those beats is sticking around that BPM is like the very first thing. Um, and then another thing is like whatever beat or instrumental I can give them to make like the best chorus possible. Cause I feel like the chorus always drives most songs and it definitely does with like house music and stuff too. So whatever beat I can make to try to get them to have the best performance of the chorus, like that's always what I'm after. Cause I'm personally not the best writer as like a lyricist. Um, so like I have tons some of my songs have been used like I'll have the same artist, a bunch of different artists use the same beat because for some reason they're able to do a really good performance on that one beat, but I'll just keep having them on that beat to get that performance just to be able to use it on other records that I'm going to do. But just because for some reason that beat resonates with most artists in that lane, then I'll just keep sending that beat out to the same artist. They'll send me their hook or verse and then I can go from there. But it's always the same beat every time. Um, I don't know if it's the groove. I don't know if it's the pocket. I don't know if it's the speed, um, but yeah, it just works for him.
Interesting. Just the same thing works across the board.
Yeah,
You don't get that very often.
no, you don't get it, and I think it's just maybe it's the beat that is just like really simple, and it's just I think with hip hop like simplicity is key, especially to like get an artist on it and stuff. So I think I've been trying to keep like the hip hop beat simple to get the best performance to then like really go in there and make a whole record around that.
No, that makes sense. So if you just so do you not do then a lot on the like I guess what we're calling essentially the like more hip hop end of things in your process if you're kind of using these same pieces to then transform into the house? Like is that part of the puzzle almost like less active than the other side just because you've found what works and you're able to keep using it?
Well, I mean um it's tough because there's so many things like I also want to do with the project and also how I like pay my bills off music and stuff. So I feel like I have my hand in also the hip hop stuff, the engineering stuff super heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and I also have it a little bit in the EDM stuff with my own project. So really trying to like blend those two worlds. I think the hardest thing though is finding the right artist to get on the project. Some feature prices crazy who I want to get on. The other ones like I have to just like build like genuine relationships to try to like get those features that I think would be awesome for the project. So it's a lot of stuff like that. I definitely feel like the struggle, and that's just part of the project that I'm doing is like always having features on my songs because for me it's just I just want like original vocals. Splice vocals and stuff like that are cool, but for me I just like really want original vocals, and I feel like that is definitely like the hardest the hardest thing for sure. Because like it also sometimes I feel bad. I'll have a lot of artists on my stuff, and it's just like it's not coming out the way I want, and like you just sometimes unfortunately the record doesn't come out, but that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, especially if you're not like, because it's a lot easier in that regard to be someone who is also like their own vocalist. Like if you're able, because then it's not only like you're writing to your own voice at that point, but you're also like, you can drop everything that you're doing when you have a free afternoon and record it. Like everybody just period is always busy. In the music world it gets even crazier, and so just like and then like you don't know if it's going to be the right fit until you do it, and so it's just a whole thing. It'd be much easier to just be able to use your own voice sometimes, but I get it.
I know, and I every like I've tried to rap and sing, and my voice is so bad, so I'm just like I'm never picking up a mic in that realm. But yeah, it's definitely hard. And for the 2 Points project, I keep a pretty strict release schedule of one a month for sure.
Hmm.
So it's like I'm always like trying to plan ahead. Like I already have March and April's releases like already like scheduled and ready to go. So it's like, yeah, it's hard with everyone's schedules and like trying to like plan that much in ahead just in case like something comes up, and also having like features. Like it's definitely tough, but that's the fun of it. I think sticking to a release schedule and sticking to it no matter what. So
I mean, I think that's one of the best things you can do. It's something that can be sometimes challenging to do. It's a lot of people struggle with even just getting stuff out on the regular, especially when it comes to like if you're working on a longer project, like an EP or something. And then it's like for me personally, I don't want to do the release one song a month for this like 6 song project. Cause then it's like, well, I don't want to wait for the rest of the pieces of that puzzle, you know? So, but I think like not just even having a release schedule, but being able to stick to it puts you ahead of most. To be completely honest,
I
it's
hope.
a hard thing to do.
Yeah, no, I hope. But I mean, that was the goal for me, is like when I started this project, because I started this project a year ago from today. Was like my first release was a year ago today in January. Um, but I was just like, I'm just gonna stick to a song a month no matter what until something happens. So like,
And
yeah,
yeah, I mean that's the best thing you can do. They always say like the more consistent you can be, the better just that looks, and then you can actually like the more consistent you are too, it just makes it easier to maintain any sort of fan base. Like then people have something that like is regularly reminding them that like, hey, I'm like doing this thing. And it's like even if you drop like a really good song, but you don't do anything for another year or even 6 months, it's like people aren't gonna care.
yeah, no, true. And it's like we hear talking now about all algorithms and everything, algorithms and this
Mm-hmm.
and that, but like the Spotify algorithm like is real, and it will throw you a huge bone to like good listeners that would appreciate your music. And my last release like really probably triggered the most like algorithmic streams I've ever had, which was almost like 10,000 just on algorithmic stuff, which is super cool because it's like it's getting it out to that audience that probably is going to enjoy listening to my music the most, which is cool. So I think keeping a steady release schedule like that is like so key just for the algorithm in itself. I feel like it's so key. It's like Instagram, TikTok. Like if you don't post like in a consistent schedule, like it might not they may not ever like throw you a bone. And I feel like as a music artist or a business or whatever, like you want the algorithm to eventually throw you that bone. That's what's gonna like help you in your career, in my opinion. So
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big TikTok person, and if you're not like posting regularly, it kind of falls off. But I mean, like it doesn't even have to be anything exceptional on a regular basis. If you're just like meeting minimum requirements, obviously don't post dog shit, but like if you're like doing something decent, like daily even, like you're gonna like you might not see it overnight, which everybody wants, but if you just put in that work over a few months, like you're gonna see that grow. And that's the same with like something like Spotify. It's like, yes, it's not a post every day kind of thing because who has the time to put a song out every day? But even on like a monthly basis, like even if you don't realize it right away, people notice.
exactly. And the algorithms notice, whoever's behind them notices, the computer notices. So unfortunately, that's the world we live in, is algorithms. But
Yeah.
that's just how it goes. We gotta tailor to them a little bit. So yeah,
Yeah.
for me, I think sticking to that steady release schedule is like super important, and it just keeps you on like a tight schedule. Like, oh yeah, everyone is always busy, has a ton of other things going on in their life,
Hmm.
but music's really important to you. You also need to prioritize that. So
No, absolutely. That makes me kind of want to restructure the way I'm doing things and start putting out music at least once a month.
yeah, do it. And I think one thing that really helps with that is also just try not to be as much of a perfectionist. Like in the
Hmm.
beginning, I was like such a perfectionist. Like I would spend more hours mixing it than I would making it. And honestly, at this point, I'm just like, if it sounds if it sounds pretty good, I'm not gonna go through all the nitpicky stuff. Like it could be better, because I think that's at the end of the day is like slowing down, and was like a huge crutch and slowing me down in the past, was trying to be too much of a perfectionist with my music. And I feel like now it's getting way better and way faster, that I'm taking things like a little less serious on trying to be the most like nitpicky little things. So
No, absolutely. Like, I mean, I can I'm not I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but I'm a like pretty close to perfect perfectionist. Because at some point you just have to pull the trigger and call it a day. But then I mean, even after the fact, I'm looking at songs and I'm like, well, this could have been different. This could have been different. Well, yes, like it all could have been different. Music is subjective. There is no like, obviously there's like sound requirements for like actually like putting it out and whatnot. But like when it comes to how you mixed it, how you produced it, like all the elements that go into that are very subjective. You can do it in 100 different ways and it still could be good. It depends on what you really wanted to get out of it and what you ultimately wanted it to sound like. So you have to eventually pull the trigger because otherwise you're going to be redoing a song for months or even up to a year and just it's not even worth it at that point. Like flesh out the idea, do a little tweaking and polishing and whatnot. But then if you hit 85%, 90% of the way to perfect, you're done. Call it a
Yeah,
day.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, there also is something to be said about like trying to make everything's perfect. But I feel like in the beginning and like when you're trying to start a project, it's just like you just need bodies of work and like you just got to get in the habit of like starting and finishing, starting and finishing, starting and finishing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one thing that's really helped me and my music is not being as much of a perfectionist. So
Yeah. Kind of getting to that workflow stage of like, okay, this is the steps that we take. These are the things that we do, checking all the boxes. We're done.
exactly, exactly.
Well, back to our regularly scheduled program. If you had to create a new genre around your style of music, what would you call it?
I call it trap house. That's what I would call it.
Why?
Yeah. Because I would really want to take more elements of like trap beats and infuse them with house. Um, so it would be, and that's what I've been trying to experiment with. I haven't had, unfortunately, it hasn't been to my liking yet of what I've been trying to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think taking certain bases from trap music, like the heavy 808s and stuff, and using that in house music in a way that like hasn't been done would be cool. Um, House music, always the beats are always like the open hi hat. You hear that pretty much all day, every day for house music. There was something like slightly different than that was still in that BPM that maybe like trap hi hats or something with house music over. I don't know how it'd work, but that's what I would try to do, trap house. And I tried to like coin that term for a while, but I just realized that there's still a lot of work to do in that regard. So can't coin it yet, but that's what I would call it, trap house.
Okay. Noted.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know either very well, but I know how trap, especially with like how the drums are and trap, like the hi-hats and whatnot. And like you said, house is very that way. So it'd be interesting to see how that combination kind of pans out.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're two different grooves, which is hard to like combine them into like
Oh
one,
yeah.
but that would kind of be like I guess that's what I'm kind of going for this project is trying to figure that out the best I can. So
Yeah, it's like almost putting like jazz and like I don't want to say like R&B because they kind of I mean I'm sure there is jazz influence in R&B, but it's still like a little bit apples and oranges. So it's like just kind of trying to put that kind of thing together.
yeah, which but some of those blended genres make like the coolest music. Like
Mm-hmm.
Chris does that. If you're familiar with him and like the EDM, plays like saxophone, rips the stage, but then also just like drops some like crazy dubstep. It's crazy. It's honestly like so cool. It's like a really cool blended genres like done in a new way. Um, yeah, so stuff like that is sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you kind of get into that like integration, it's one of those where it's like you can do it and it can be really cool, or you can do it and it can make no sense. And there's not really an in between.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like sometimes
That's
like
the tricky part.
yeah, sometimes it's like you want to make out there stuff to be like unique, but then I feel like there's a line where it's like now you're just like experimental and like I don't know if people are gonna like listen to this or perceive this the right way. So it's a fine line, I think. But
Absolutely. Um, is there a release that you've put out that you think best embodies who you are as an artist? Like if you had to sell somebody on being the next 2 Points fan, you had one song to show them. What are you showing them?
when you make it featuring Lock West,
Why?
I think it's the best one. I think it's my favorite song, and I think it best embodies everything about the 2 Points brand. It was started as a different record, completely different rap record, turned it into like a house record that's more of like tech house with original rap vocals on it. Um, yeah, and I think that if people were to perceive my sound, that would be the one to go to.
Okay. Well, here is a sample of that.
Clap, clap, get it, put your back into it. Might just throw a couple stacks into it when you make it. Clap, clap, dirty money like I'm Diddy. And every nigga know you in your city from the way you make it. Might just throw a couple stacks into it when you make it.
Okay, well, on that note, if you had to pick 2 or 3 artists that you think your music is a combination of, who would you choose?
I would say Chami, Chris Lake, and Mala.
What elements of like each of them do you think kind of feeds into what you're doing?
Yeah, I think Chami has like a really blend of like he's bass house, but some of his like buildups and stuff, he's like more melodic, and that's something like I've always loved about like his music. He's one of my favorite artists of all time, so like I've always been trying to like try to make music like somewhat like him, but like not like him. But and then Mala is definitely more like the club stuff, so like I love club music. So he's definitely like inspiration as far as like the club music, and third for Chris Lake is like one of my favorite house artists. But I think the way that he uses vocal samples and like some of his songs around vocals is something like I would eventually like love to get into and do. Another artist, it's imagine if you fuse all three of those artists with like a DJ Khaled style where he gets all the features on it and stuff like that. If you were like to blend all those like four, that's pretty much like what 2 Points is trying to become in terms of sound wise.
Interesting. Little DJ Khaled tossing is just threw me
Yeah,
for a loop.
it's just like crazy, and I think that's what hopefully is going to make the project stand out and unique.
No, absolutely. I think that's, I mean, combining a bunch of different styles is kind of what makes us the way that we are when it comes to creating. But as long as you're not like answering that question with just one artist that like is very heavily clearly an influence on the stuff that you're doing, I think you're doing things right.
I hope. I hope.
um what is an outside passion of yours that you think impacts who you are as an artist?
Definitely snowboarding. Snowboarding is like one of my like favorite things to do, and like one thing I like grew up doing all the time. Fortunately, I don't get to do it as much anymore as I live in California now, but definitely snowboarding. I would just like I always listen to music when I'm snowboarding, and it's like I always pull a lot of inspiration when I listen to music, like when I'm snowboarding and stuff like that. So I feel like that's one like outside hobby that has just been with me like my whole entire life, still with me, and like yeah, snowboarding for sure.
It's a very unexpected answer, just will partly be knowing that you're in California, but also just like I can't picture myself. I mean, I've been skiing a few times, but like listening to music while something like that's going on, I feel like I'd be too worried about wiping out.
No, it's the best. It's the best. You're just zoned out, going down the slopes. It's the best.
Interesting. And that's where a lot of inspiration seems to strike for you.
I mean, inspiration like strikes everywhere for me, but it's just like one. I feel like it's just yeah. It's like every time I like listen to music and snowboard, I sometimes like will go back in the studio and like I've been thinking about like music the wrong way, and like I've been trying to maybe force a result so much instead of just write as many ideas as you possibly can, and just the best ones finish. The ones that aren't as strong, maybe hold off for a little while. And I don't know why snowboarding always gives me that feeling, but I think I listen to so much different music. It's like because when I snowboard, my snowboarding playlist is a shuffle of like all different types, from like rap, EDM to like random like 303 random music. And I think that's what kind of keeps it inspired, is just like at the end of the day, like it's all just like music. Like you're thinking about stuff like way too seriously. And I think for me that's like a huge inspiration of why it kind of just like motivates me more just to like have fun with it. So
Interesting. I never really thought about that way. But yeah, I mean, thinking about music the wrong way. Interesting.
yeah, because
I
it's
mean,
just when
yeah.
snowboarding is just like you're just having fun, right? You
Hmm.
might be out there with the boys or with whoever, and you're just drinking, having a good time, snowboarding. It's just like and listening to music. It's just like I need to approach music like differently, because now it's like, oh, I'm doing this as a career, like I gotta take this seriously, like everything's got to be such a tight schedule, boom, 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 whatever. But just like having more fun with it, I think is gonna have way more of an impact. And for some reason, like listening to music while I snowboard, like brings that like thought more into fruition for me. So yeah.
I mean, if it works, it works.
Yeah, exactly. If it works, it works. So it's yeah, exactly.
Kind of, I mean, it could play into what we just talked about, but what is the sort of ideal listening scenario for someone to listen to 2 points?
Yeah, probably three places. On a boat, in the club, or in the car. So one of those three.
Interesting. Why on a boat?
Because I do make some summer music, and I feel like just summer, just on a boat, drinking, hanging out with your friends, watching the sunset on a boat. I do also make music for that kind of that vibe too. One of my songs called "Feelings," the Ibiza edit is kind of like that vibe, and I kind of made it with that intention and intention. I know like you personally, like you're from the Midwest, you probably have a lot of lakes. Like sometimes you'll just like maybe like go cruise on a boat or something, chill with your friends, like drinking, summertime music kind of vibe. Like I do also enjoy making that type of music, and so that's why I said boat. Some of it is boat vibes. So
Some of it is boat vibes. All right. Um, and then like, would those like, are any of like, obviously like you gave three kind of options essentially. Do you think that like there is like, if you were to like break your stuff into playlists, is it like beach vibe, like club vibe, car vibe, or is it like there's like different scenarios for each of the songs?
I think there are definitely different scenarios for the songs. Because yeah, like all this, like there are a lot of songs on my project that sound very similar, and there are some that sound a little different, like the boat vibe or maybe more of a chill, like kind of car vibe. But I'd say probably most of my catalog sticks within more of the club playlist stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, the majority sticks within a club playlist type of stuff, workout playlist, stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, EDM slash hip hop type vibes are definitely workout type vibes.
Exactly.
It'll
Um,
always be that way.
yeah, and some like when I look at my Spotify for artists, a lot of the playlists are like workout playlists. So I'm like that makes sense. But
I mean, if it's sitting at that high tempo, that's all you
exactly,
need.
you need something to pump iron to. So
Yeah, exactly. Um, what is it that you think, I mean, we've touched on this a little bit, but what is it that you think sets you apart from other artists or producers or DJ types, whatever you want to kind of classify as in that case?
yeah, I feel like what separates me is a lot of there's kind of how I look at it. There's like two different type of producers. Kind of there's obviously a bunch more, but most people think of it like this. There's people who do hip hop and they just try to go out for placements or sell beats, and they don't really have their own like project, kind of like a DJ Khaled, stuff like that. So many producers like that. And then EDM is completely different. It's like they're all their own brands, projects. You look at like anyone like Tiesto, any EDM name, they make music directly for their project. They're going to upload on DSPs and hopefully get people to listen to their music. And I feel like there's not a lot who producers are like in both realms and trying to combine like both elements from hip hop and house music to kind of like mesh it its own like cool genre way. Like obviously there's people like the DJ Khaled and Tiesto, but there's no one I don't think yet to try to like combine both those sound and really take like start out with hip hop beats and then fuse them, get that performance and fuse them around to your own original house music production. So I think that's what separates a project from other projects.
No, I mean, absolutely, especially like we talked about with the whole genre fusion kind of space. It's like if you're the person to kind of like figure it out and polish it up and make it like something cool, you're golden. There's obviously a lot of room for error in something, especially when you're combining something like trap and house where it's like two kind of different vibes and even two kind of different grooves, but like being able to like really execute on that, you're golden.
Yeah, I hope so. And I feel like it's for me, it took me a while to like kind of find like my target audience because a lot of EDM and house fans also love hip hop music and they listen to that too. But I feel like a lot of hip hop music people don't listen to EDM. It's like a weird disconnect. Like they either just
Mm,
listen to hip hop or other things or pop or R&B, but they don't really listen to that much EDM. As far as EDM fans, like you ask them what they listen to during the week and it's all like hip hop or like pop stuff. And then they go and party to EDM stuff. So I feel like that's kind of like where the target market for me is like majority EDM fans who also like hip hop,
mm.
maybe not the other way around. So trying to create and tailor music to that has been hard, but also fun.
No, I mean, again, like I said earlier, with the monthly releases, you're a step ahead because you know exactly who your music is for. Um, yeah, I mean, that's half the battle.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what took me 6 years to find out. And then on the seventh year, hit the ground running kind of thing.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
That's just how the journey goes and stuff like that. And it's been also fun to focus on like branding and stuff like that too. Like it's something I never thought was fun, but now I think it's fun and interesting. So
It's a word that scares a lot of people in the music space. People don't like to hear the word branding.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean it's tough, like putting yourself out there on social media and stuff is like it's never the easiest thing. And like, you want everyone to like perceive your project as cool, but sometimes it's just not gonna come off that way. Um, so yeah, I think it's hard for a lot of artists, and I struggled with that for a long time too. It's just like putting myself out there. Honestly, that's like a huge hurdle I think for most artists, like just putting yourself out there because
Hmm.
you know people know you for something growing up or whatever, and then like now you're trying to do music, and it's just like yeah, I don't know. It's hard for people to put themselves out there, and I think just repetitiveness, doing it all the time. TikTok is good. Make a TikTok account. Don't tell anyone you made one, and then just do it every day. It's honestly the move
Right.
for 2023.
No, absolutely. It's been the move since 2021.
I know.
Um,
I wish I hopped on it earlier, but oh well.
Better late than never. That's the thing. It's like people like are always like, "Oh, like I haven't done the TikTok thing and like it's too late now." I'm like,
It's
it's
not too.
not.
It's not too late.
It's not too late. It's too late if you keep waiting.
Yeah.
Like you can't go back and be like, "Oh, like make one like 6 months ago." It's not how it works. Like just do it now so that in 6 months you're not saying, "Oh, I wish I would have made one 6 months ago still."
Yeah, exactly. It's
So,
TikTok. I guess we're getting off track, but TikTok's kind of like the Wild West. Like it's going to show your video to a bunch of random people, and some of them are going to really love it, and some are going to absolutely hate it, and they're going to let you know. But I think it's good for your music and your art to get that
mhm.
kind of feedback because, like, I mean, the whole Instagram thing, posting something, and then like all your homies posting like "Let's go" with a bunch of fire emojis is like probably not going to build your career to the fullest. So you got to get out there to new audiences and be vulnerable. And if people say it's trash, it's take it as an opinion, but yeah, you need to put yourself out there as an artist, I think.
No, absolutely. That's half the battle.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of impact do you want to have with the project?
Hmm. Um, I mean, obviously, like it I mean, obviously it'd be like cool to like inspire others to like do music and pursue music. But I think another big thing is also to like probably one of the biggest impacts is like to create multiple like revenue streams around your music and stuff is like I'm big on because like I have my own like artist project, but then I have my own like music business company, which they're like honestly completely like two separate things.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's probably my biggest impact of being like you can also like you can do both in a sense, and you can have like that be your brand, and it's like okay to yeah, obviously want to really focus on like your music project and like that passion, but if you're like music's the only thing I want to do and I like want to make money from it, like no matter how I can, like I also want to like impact people to do that too. That's probably like the biggest impact is I have musicians also want to be their own like entrepreneurs and also like live and thrive off their art and stuff that is around their art as well.
No, I mean, especially in kind of like a building stage, like something that's going to kind of help you accelerate is being more than just someone putting out music and do kind of, even if your skill set applies, like doing something along the lines of working beyond that. Like just like there are some people that are like, I just want to do the artist thing. There are other people that just want to be immersed in music in some way, shape, or form, and that's all that matters. And if you're one of those people, just do the things. You know, it doesn't have to just like there's more to the world than just a music project or an artist project even.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing I want to like inspire and have impact on other people is like they're like probably as an artist you're gonna have like multiple revenue streams because like let's say you have a really good year and then like the other year you just like kind of like fall off. Maybe you're not touring as much or like doing as many shows or the streams are down and like instead of just like giving up completely, like you I'm sure you can find other ways to keep your music dream alive, kind of thing like that. So that's probably like one of the things I want my message or impact to be.
No, absolutely. The business is bigger than just one piece of the puzzle. It's multiple revenue streams is the way the world is shifting, I feel like anymore anyway, but especially the way the music world is. Um, especially for independence. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I feel like with the internet stuff, a lot of people have turned to that. Like you see so many artists who also have like cool Twitch streams or cool Discords and they like build a brand around like community and other stuff like that. So I think it's just cool when artists also think about stuff like that too, to even if it's not their music that people are latching onto, it's like what they do around music and like with music and how they build community, I think is what makes other artists and producers like really cool and stand out. So
they will come for the music, they will stay for the artist. I've been saying that for a long time.
I like that.
It could not be more true. They
I
will
like
come for the music, but they will stay for the artist. You can sell somebody on listening to your next song, but what will gain them as an actual fan is being something beyond just this is my next single or this is my new single.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. I think that's cool. And that's one thing I've been trying to do is like put more of my like personal life and stuff out there on my social media so people can like actually like learn that about you because that's what makes them like a stronger fan. And I feel like for artists, that's sometimes the hardest thing to like
Mm-hmm.
post for yourself out there is like you're trying to like have this like persona and like brand and that's cool. But like even for me, like sometimes I miss putting like the personal stuff out that ultimately makes people like way more of a fan, you know?
No, absolutely. It it's I mean it's branding. That's branding, you know.
Ex- yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think that brings us to the final question and what kind of inspired this whole podcast as a whole. Why music?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me, why music? It's just like a transfer of energy for me. Like I'm in the studio with so many people a day. Like I meet so many new different people a day to work on music and stuff. And it's always just like a transfer of energy. It's always like its own vibe, but it's like you the energy that you put out or put into a room like always goes back into the music. And I feel like that's one of the coolest things. Like for me, like what inspired me to get into music was like going to my first ever like rave or EDM concert. And like that energy was just like so overwhelming and crazy and cool that like it like honestly changed my life in just like one 3 4 hour concert just because like the energy was there. So for me, I think it's just energy, transfer of energy. And I think that's my favorite part.
That's one of my probably favorite answers on that question so far because that's I mean a transfer of energy. You don't really it's something that it's like it's one of those things where it's once you hear it, you're like, that makes so much sense, but you don't think about it until somebody else says it. And now I'm thinking about it and I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes beyond sense.
Yeah, it's just it's cool and like you with working with a bunch of artists and stuff, you'll see like different energies. Some are like really cool and want to work with them more, some like you don't, and it's all just like an energy and like a roar around whatever you're working on at the time. And I think that's probably my favorite part for sure.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's just I mean, it's a people business ultimately. And so it's like it is very much a vibe game.
Exactly, and that's my favorite part. Like I obviously like love people and like love doing all that stuff. Definitely like a people's person. So yeah, I think that just like makes it 10 times better. So
No, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better.
thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of the Why Music podcast. Check back again next week for another conversation with another independent artist. Thanks for listening.